Training camp update for the San Francisco 49ers. We got to talk about this quarterback battle, man. And so far, Brock Purdy is in the league. And of course, if you guys been keeping up with this, you would know that Brock Purdy is pretty much the starter going into week 1. John Lynch, the 49ers general manager, he kind of already came out and voiced his support for Brock Purdy. You look at how well Brock Purdy performed last year. He took the 49ers all the way to the NFC Conference Championship game, so he pretty much has earned the right to be labeled the starting QB, at least for this moment. But how is Trey Lance and Sam Darnold doing? That's really interesting. Trey Lance, there were a lot of reports coming out by the national media who were saying that he wasn't good. He was behind Sam Darnold on the depth chart. And when I went ahead and was doing my research, looking into some of the 49ers training camp reports that have come out about Trey Lance, he hasn't been bad at all. As a matter of fact, the national media is trying to paint a narrative about Trey Lance that's not really true. Trey Lance, there isn't any big separation between him and Sam Darnold. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, I think that Trey Lance has a little bit of a lead up in this competition for the backup QB spot on Sam Darnold. And Trey Lance, when you look at how he's performed so far throughout training camp for the 49ers, he's been up and down. He's had some good days and he's also had some really bad days. Now, what's standing out about Trey Lance is that he throws a fantastic deep ball, and it's weird that he's more accurate throwing the deep ball, it seems, than he is throwing short intermediate routes. His short accuracy isn't good, and his intermediate accuracy isn't better neither. So it's really odd to see a quarterback who is really accurate throwing the ball downfield, but struggles throwing the football within the short and medium ranges of the field. That's something that you don't really see all that often. Also, Trey Lance has displayed really good athleticism, getting outside the pocket, extending plays, picking up yardage with his legs. Trey Lance, he's been way better than what's been reported by the national media. Don't listen to FS1 and ESPN when it comes to these training camp updates unless it's somebody who's visibly been in attendance, because Trey Lance has not been bad and he isn't garbage, and I don't think that he's behind Sam Darnold on the depth chart. And when you look at Sam Darnold, he hasn't been lighting the world on fire like how the national media would lead you to believe. If anything, he's been consistently decent. He hasn't been anything crazy. He hasn't been having phenomenal performances. Now, he hasn't had a ton of bad performances. He has had a couple of stinkers in there. But for the most part, Sam Darnold has been consistently solid. If Sam Darnold has to start in replace of Trey Lance or Brock Purdy getting injured, the 49ers will be able to be fine with him and they will be able to have success. But I think Trey Lance and Brock Purdy are obviously the two best quarterbacks on this roster at this moment. I get Sam Darnold was a former first-round pick. His career hasn't really panned out how most people expected it to. And you're really excited if you're a believer in Sam Darnold about what he can be in San Fran with Kyle Shanahan and the team that he has around him. But I just think for right now, he's the third quarterback in this competition. Number 2, I'm going with Trey Lance. Trey Lance, he hasn't been terrible. He's performed really well over the last couple of days throughout training camp for the 49ers. He's really started to pick things up. He has improved his throwing motion. His mechanics have gotten better. It's just that he has to get better with the decision-making side of the football, and his accuracy still needs some improvement. Brock Purdy, he's been rusty a little bit to start off training camp, but over the last 2 practices, he really has started to settle in. And this is what you expect Brock Purdy, he hasn't really been able to participate in a lot of football activities due to him still trying to get back to full strength from that elbow injury. He doesn't really practice on the same schedule that Sam Darnold and Trey Lance do. And they are trying to slowly work him back into the thick of things. But with how he has performed over the last few days, I think that he's starting to get back into the rhythm that he was around last season. And Brock Purdy, I don't really think he has a huge margin for error. I think the 49ers and this organization are looking for every excuse possible to start Trey Lance. They just don't really have a good one because right now Trey Lance hasn't proven that he's better than Brock Purdy. He's proven that he's better than Sam Darnold, or at least slightly better based on the reports. But when it comes to him and Brock Purdy, there's still a significant gap there. Everything that Kyle Shanahan needs out of his quarterback, he gets out of Brock Purdy. You get somebody who makes good decisions with the football, is very accurate in the quick passing game, short, intermediate sides of the field when it comes to being able to accurately distribute the football. Trey Lance, on the other hand, he's not that accurate compared to Brock Purdy. He's a better athlete than Brock Purdy, has a way stronger arm than Brock Purdy, but he's not what Kyle Shanahan needs right now. He needs a quarterback that's going to distribute the football accurately, make good reads and good decisions with the football. That's what Brock Purdy does. And until Trey Lance can get on the same level as Brock Purdy when it comes to football decision making and making sure that he can be accurate in the short intermediate passing game, I don't think that Brock Purdy is going to end up losing this starting quarterback job anytime soon, at least in training camp. If Brock Purdy ends up getting benched or he doesn't end up getting the starting nod, I think that happens sometime throughout the season if he struggles. I don't think it's going to happen in training camp. Sam Darnold, I think the gap between Brock Purdy and him is pretty big, and the gap between him and Trey Lance isn't as big, but I think it's pretty sizable. Trey Lance, he hasn't been god-awful, he hasn't been dookie, but he hasn't been better than Brock Purdy. And I still believe that Brock Purdy gives the 49ers the best chance to win. He's the better quarterback at this moment. He's performing the best, even though some may argue that Trey Lance has been the best because he has better statistics. But Brock Purdy hasn't been able to have the same amount of practice time as Trey Lance. He isn't going the same amount of days as Trey Lance and Sam Darnold are. There are some days that the 49ers make Brock Purdy sit to conserve his health and try to make sure that they don't rush him back from that elbow injury too fast. So the 49ers quarterback battle right now, Trey Lance is second behind Brock Purdy, and I think right behind Trey Lance is Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold hasn't been terrible, but he's just been decent. He's been okay or mid. A lot of terminology people like to use this day is calling somebody mid if they're average, and that's pretty much what Sam Darnold has been. He's been consistent. He hasn't struggled with a lot of turnovers. He hasn't made a lot of bad mistakes, but he hasn't done anything that makes you go, wow, Sam Darnold's going off. And for Trey Lance, he's been inconsistent, as I mentioned earlier, but he hasn't been as bad as what the national media is trying to make him out to be.